little bit about conducive spaces of how to get my retreat practice going in my home or in a more retreative setting, and having less wants, less desires is a great thing in general to think about right now with your mind. A number of people I know as they age start to think about retirement or downsizing. If you're not at that level yet, you're thinking about building a career, maybe expanding, and if you have a place and a property or a house, you might be accumulating things. So it's something to think about in your accumulation. You know, I had been in my youth in an accumulation phase. You feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing. So I found it very interesting when I got on the Dharma path. It changed a bit. It wasn't really about accumulating stuff, it's about accumulating wisdom, compassion. So it's one thing to have a little assessment about your belongings and property and things that may keep you from practicing, from doing retreat. Because we end up being slaves sometimes to keeping it, storing it, moving it, cleaning it out, and things like that. So if that's something that clutters your mind, you might want to start looking at that. I'm reading this book right now. It's been around for a while. That I don't know the name. The Japanese art of tidying up or something. Have you heard of this book? It's very fun. It's very fun. I mean, I have my I have my 20 boxes, and I feel like it's too much because I don't actually have a regular home right now, and I'd like to get rid of a lot of it and a lot of its books. So, but it's kind of neat where she has you kind of like, you know, an article of clothing, a book. Does this give you joy? You know, is it like you really have to, there's ways that you come about a little bit more easily letting go of it, you know, appreciating it for what it was and moving it along like that. Okay, so let me talk, and we will do a little meditation a little bit after the food kind of digests a bit. So I'm just getting to some of your points. Gianna, be more mindful in daily life. So part of what I do is also, let me bring in a few mindfulness things I'm starting to teach from my computer, as they do now in universities. And also traveling, I don't have to carry so much stuff with me. I wanted to talk a little bit about 7 attitudinal foundations of mindfulness. And this is what you build into your daily life that can be helpful. 7 attitudinal foundations of mindfulness. And when I mentioned, I like these notes that I made. Some are from John Kabat-Zinn and different teachers. When I mentioned to please be realistic with your own practice, and in awakening mindfulness for yourself, it's a process. And he has a nice, I talked about patience, he has a nice quote here, patience is a form of wisdom. It demonstrates that we understand and accept the fact that sometimes things must unfold in their own time. Okay? So that's a good one for Americans, I find, for this kind of culture. That things have their own time of unfolding, and I find that that also helps relax me when my practice isn't going the way I think it should. You know, I put that in quotes. But also for life stuff. You're working with a colleague and they're getting away with this or this. Things have their own social way that they tend to work out. I don't always have to be the fixer or have to say something, or, you know, sometimes things have their way of working out. So let me just talk about these foundations of mindfulness. And mindfulness, again, being present with what is there within and around you in this moment. Okay? Being present with what is there within and around you in this moment. And as a Buddhist, one different thing in relation to just mindfulness here is Buddhists are considered, as a Buddhist you're considered, without giving it away yet, what would you say makes you a Buddhist? Since we're at a Buddhist center. We're not all Buddhists here, but what would make somebody a Buddhist?
Refuge.
Bodhicitta and refuge. Those are always the first 2 responses I often hear. Bodhicitta and refuge certainly is related to making you a Buddhist, no doubt. Compassion. very much related to bodhicitta, part of mindfulness. What about the mindfulness? Can you say any more about it? Or anybody? What other things make you a Buddhist? What's different about a Buddhist than somebody else, perhaps? When something goes wrong, do you create your own reality? So a Buddhist, I'm going to say, sometimes we'd say, is an inner being. An inner being. Inner being. And also you've got these 4 seals of Buddhism. Impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and non-duality. They tend to go into those modes as well. Okay, but you're an inner being, which means something bad happens to me, I'm not blaming out there. So mindfulness relates when he says, when they say, with what is there within, but it's also and around you in the present moment. Okay, number 1, foundation, acceptance. Bringing an open, kind, a welcome to experience, just experience something just as it is in this moment. Okay, not passive or resigned to something. From this place of acceptance, response and change occur naturally. Okay, so in the face of social injustice, you don't just sit there and go, that's the way it is. But you do understand, and this would, in relating it to Buddhism, I'd say samsara. I know that things are broken in samsara. I know I came back with contaminated aggregates, we might say, that caused me to suffer. I know that if you're in samsara and you experience it, you're experiencing birth, old age, sickness, and death, and all of that will create problems for you. Okay? So I accept that, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to help somebody if they're having a hard time and just say, well, it's samsara. No, of course. But I have this more open, spacious acceptance of it. That's how it is. Rather than, why does she have leukemia? You know, and railing at the doctors. Where's that going to get you? It's not going to take away her leukemia. So there's an understanding of the illness, let's say in that case, and then, well, I wonder how I can help this person. Maybe I can bring them to the hospital for the chemo treatments. Or maybe, you know, okay, acceptance. Here's the second one, non-judging. Assuming the stance of impartial witness to our experience. Again, assuming the stance of impartial witness to our experience. So noticing the stream of the judging mind, but not getting involved by grasping or aversion. Being okay with what is. So I mentioned again, when you're meditating, and I said this in the beginning, your mind, I said you focus on the breath. And then I said if you lose the object of meditation, you're off the breath for a moment, the mind goes over here. And I said you don't need to have any judgment or story about it. No further elaboration. Okay, so non-judging. And if I am judging, can you just observe it? The very big, powerful place. Third one is patience. Being patient with oneself and the process. Completely open to now. And recognizing that things can only emerge in their own time. Okay, we talked about that. Okay. Number 4, beginner's mind. Beginner's mind, I love this. Willing to see everything as if for the first time with fresh curiosity. Open to wonder, being with don't know. Okay, you're hanging out with sometimes I don't know. Beginner's mind. I love the fresh curiosity. So can you also exert some curiosity in your practice, in your everyday daily life and practice? We go through, some people feel like doldrums, you know that word? And you've got routines and ruts. Now some people cling to it. You like, you know, some sort of stability of things. That's okay. But it's nice to kind of wake up and you never know what possibility, what new experience is there around the corner. And it could be a little tiny thing. Yeah, I had a thing the other day. There was something, I went into this coffee shop we'd been in before, and somehow something we ate, my sister and I, and it tasted better to me. And I said, this is better than, it was a place that had been there for like 30 years. So I had this kind of thing in my mind, that's what I'll experience, and something delighted me. You know, it was the same old place, same kind of menu, and so I said, this is good. This is better than, that was my experience. You know, and I think there was some openness in me to have, but sometimes we're not open to that. So can you have beginner's mind and with your practice and with what's going to show up for your mind. And then it's okay not to know something, to have the don't know show up. Can I just hang with that? Number 5, trust. Trusting our own basic goodness, our wisdom, and our heart. Trusting the validity of all of our experience. Trusting each moment. What do you think about your basic goodness? Trust is a little bit of an issue for us in New England, I would say. Having lived in Vermont for 5.5 years and having visited New England for years. Actually, I lived in Boston one summer. I went to Red Sox games. Still always looking for that Buddhist baseball fan, okay? Trust can be a little bit of an issue at times in many cultures, What do you think about your basic goodness? Can anybody personally say how they feel about their basic goodness?
I would say that it's there and it's one of the more stronger aspects of my personality. And when I don't act in that way, that's the aspect of my mind that tisks me. And I know it, and I may not have that external dialogue, but it's definitely happening internally. So I know it's always there, it's always present, it's always my natural state.
But from a good place.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very nice. That's very healthy. Sounds very balanced, like that. And so one thing I mentioned, when I wake up in the morning, I have this little gratitude exercise, and we've done it here in previous classes that I've led. Little gratitude exercise. And I really breathe in love and glory and I'm so happy to be in this life, even when I have a bad day and I wake up in a bad mood or I'm sick. It's still a lot better than most people. So I have this little gratitude experience, and there's things I said where you can also do it in a conventional way of meditating on precious human rebirth, meaning from the 18 situations, 8 freedoms, 10 richnesses. You could review and go through, we're free from being an animal. And you analyze the animal realm, what's that like, okay? But you can do it in an unconventional way. So for instance, I just appreciate the good situation, the good circumstances I've taken rebirth into. Decent family, relatively clean air and water to breathe and water to drink, good public education, relatively good sound body and mind, and I could go like that, food in the refrigerator, warm bed, those circumstances. But then what about reveling in your good qualities? How's that for people? Are you aware of your good qualities?
Maybe last teaching of Geshe last one before, where we talk about how we're not supposed to be prideful. But what I said I have problems with is, it's okay to recognize that you're doing the right thing and getting joy from that. But it just seems like it's a bit of a balance. You don't always know. I try to catch myself, say, okay, it's okay to feel good about this, but don't, go too far and,
Right.
And maybe some of that is latent Catholicism too. Don't feel too good about yourself, anyway, so I think for me it really it's hard to balance sometimes to say, oh yes, I did something good and I feel good, but there's always that catch, okay, but don't get carried away.
Right. So both of our areas, the Boston area and the Philadelphia area, are actually quite sister cities, very similar makeups of the cities. We do have high Catholic populations and a big archdiocese in both areas, and provincial neighborhoods of, we have big Irish population, big Italian area, and, it's great. They're great neighborhoods and things. So sometimes we do have these things of, and I also think Geshe teaching as a Tibetan, you're going to get a slightly different cultural vein, and Doug brought up what the cultural trappings sometimes of things. So I'm talking about in a balanced way. What I find is my Asian sisters and brothers, particularly Tibetans, they don't have this crippling low self-esteem things that a lot of people in Western cultures have. And I've me and some friends, we really like looked at this and reflected on what's the deal? Like, why don't they have it? And, why can you say something to correct a Tibetan of something more easily and just say, oh, when you clean the room, can you make sure you do that? And you say it, and Tibetan's just like, okay. And you say it to an American, and then they obsess about it for a month, that they do a horrible job, and that's all they hear is the negative, So it's been very interesting of where does it come from and why we like that, and, what do we trust in ourselves? So that's why I do ask people about their basic goodness, and I think most people in our cultures need to reflect a bit on their basic goodness and their good qualities, but in a balanced way. Not in an egomaniacal way, in a balanced way of, again, when I say with equanimity, that's what I mean, is I'm not, too high or too low, but are you aware of your good qualities? Ask people in here, right? So I think some people are just sitting there like, you talking to me, huh? Like, what do you mean good qualities? God forbid I should acknowledge that. Like it's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that. But again, not in an inflated thing that I'm better than everybody. But if you don't start acknowledging that, and I've worked with people, I'm thinking of a manager at a center I was running, very capable person, and I did these exercises, and I went over to her one day, and I said, she had created this flyer, and I said, just directly went over to her. I wasn't on my way to some place, and oh, by the way, great job, that's not a good way to manage people. And I went over and I said, this is great, I love this flyer. I wanted to tell you, thank you so much for doing this. It's just great, it's perfect. It conveys the thing, it's really bright. You did such a great job. Thank you so much. So first of all, she couldn't make eye contact with me. We were friends, she's like, yeah, And I said, hi, hello. Do you hear what I'm saying? Yeah, like this. So finally I got her to acknowledge, you could just say thank you. Somebody says, I like your hair. If they mean it genuinely, thanks. That's all. Really nice top you have on. I love your coat. Can we just say thank you? And isn't that okay? Why is it not okay? So this went on, and I felt like she never really heard me. Even though she kind of could look at me, she didn't really hear. But then one day, there was something, a group was coming. I didn't think the kitchen was really ready or cleaned, and I was kind of like, I think they're coming in like 10 minutes, or somebody just arrived. Is somebody cleaning the kitchen, or, because it was her responsibility to manage that, didn't happen. She obsessed about that for a month. That was her whole thing, that she's lousy and she kept bringing it up over and over and over again. I'm like, it's done. Like I knew what you were doing. You explained what was happening. I said, I left that story 3 weeks ago. Why are you still there? So as soon as you hear the negative, that's what's real. Why is that any more real than you got a great coat? You created a nice flyer. So that's imbalance. And that's another device of the ego as well, feeling worse about yourself. So it's something when I say to people, really, please reflect on your good qualities. Start doing it now because it lends to healthy self-esteem, especially doing it in just a normal, balanced way. I make mistakes, and I accept that, and I know where it's coming from, and I know I didn't intend it, and I'm okay. And I'm okay. So I think that's a really important point for people. And then the trusting our own basic goodness. Do you trust your own basic goodness? Huh? Right? Some people not making eye contact with me now. I know that. Okay. Do you trust your own basic goodness? Do you trust your wisdom? Do you trust your heart? Okay. The mind-heart in Tibetan is often put together here. They'll talk about the mind-heart experience. Mind in Tibetan, Buddhism system's located at the heart center because it's not the brain. Okay? So, and when you get tight, you feel it sometimes here. Okay? When you feel very spacious, open-hearted kind of experience. So do you trust it? I'd like to trust my instincts a lot, and Lama Zopa Rinpoche told me to trust my instincts a lot, which comes, I think, from my good heart. I'm not promoting myself and saying I'm the greatest thing. I'm not. I'm just, recognizing some basic value that I have. I try. I put it that way. I try. So what happens, I notice at centers, is I had a very strong instinct or inner voice of something we needed to do, this retreat or this thing happening. Then I got waved over by the staff. This happened several times. They want that. We want to hire this guy. No, we want to hire him for various reasons. When I look back now, their reasons were self-serving. When I look back, it was because the guy wanted to get out of the job because he wanted to move in with his girlfriend on the property. And he wanted to get out of the job so we could hire this guy quickly so he could let go of the job and he could, and he got a couple buddies on the staff that were his buddies that felt like that should happen. I didn't have a good instinct about the guy we were hiring because I thought he was mentally imbalanced. He was. It was a disaster for a year, okay? But I didn't trust my instinct. So again, trust your basic goodness, your wisdom, and your heart. You're going to be developing your wisdom and good-heartedness, your compassion, through your practice. Okay, so it's not like we have an infinite level of that going on. I'm trying to develop my own wisdom and compassion as I move along the path. Okay, but so just showing up for that. What is that about, the trust issues with yourself, basically? Trusting the validity of all of our experience, trusting each moment. Trusting the validity of our experience. I do find when we get into emptiness tomorrow, for anybody coming back, or for those coming to that, what happens is most of us, until you've had a direct perception of emptiness or the nature of reality, you have a mistaken perception of everything. So the story you get going about something is always wrong. Sorry to break it to you, okay? But I found it liberating, because I would be very invested in the story, okay? And very dug in. No, this is right. But the thing is, my story has a certain validity, and I trust that. I do know that the validity, meaning from my perspective, which is limited, there's a certain validity, and that's okay. It's not the whole story, though, but there is a certain validity, okay? And so whatever experience you're also having, there's something valid about that you are experiencing it. You've seen people in conflict. I'm feeling really hurt by what you did. Well, I didn't mean to hurt you, and that's not right, and you shouldn't, well, that's how somebody's feeling. You can't take that away from them. That's okay. The next thing is trusting each moment. Trusting each moment. What's that about? For me, on one level, I've been kind of lately experiencing that everything is just perfect the way it is. Do you ever feel that way? Everything's, like, even when a problem arises, the problem is designed there to show you something about your mind. So much more when something comes up, the little static out there, I'm a little bit like, it's just perfect. There's different ways to see it, but more and more I'm like, yep, okay. Sometimes I need to have my seatbelt buckled to move, and sometimes you want to take your seatbelt off and fly. It's okay. So trusting each moment. Here's the sixth one of the attitudinal foundations. Okay, non-striving, okay? Allowing the present to be the way it is without trying to fix it. Being rather than doing. Being with what is rather than aiming for goals. Relaxing rather than struggling. So this is hard for a lot of doers, and our culture is very oriented into accomplishing, achieving, competing. So it's a really great practice, the non-striving. It doesn't mean you're not productive and you don't do anything. This is all an attitude. Again, they said attitudinal foundations. This is an attitude. I used to be a fixer. I still struggle with this. Like a friend comes to you, this is happening, my husband left me, da-da-da-da-da-da. You hear the whole thing, and I was going to fix it. Some people just want you to listen to them. That wasn't good enough for me. Oh, we're going to sort this. And then it would irritate people. I just needed you to listen to me. I just need to get it out. Like that. So I think that relates a lot to that attitude. Can I just be present? First of all, with what's my inner experience, what's going on, and then what's coming at me from around. the last one is letting go. Moving out of the perpetual human tendency to want to hold on to the pleasant and get rid of the unpleasant. Releasing holding and struggling is another part of that. And linking into the natural flow of all reality, the coming and going, the impermanent nature of all things. It's a hard one for some people, letting go. Okay? Moving out of this perpetual human tendency to want to hold on to the pleasant, get rid of the unpleasant. It's not just that only. Sometimes you have an unpleasant thing happen to you, and it's hard to move on from there. And you realize, first of all, this person is an alcoholic. They're not willing to change. I've done everything I could do to help them, been very clear. We had an intervention. They're back out of rehab. They're back drinking again. This is who they are. In my mind, I can accept certain things. This is what is. You know, I'm not really going to judge them anymore. I have patience with myself in the process. You know, curiosity, beginner's mind, curiosity, things could change, right? I'm trusting my own basic goodness that I've shown up for them again and again, and I've set limits that are important. I'm not going to try to change anything. I'm just going to try to be with them when I can. I can't do anything about it or fix it. And now I need to just let it go. That's a little bit taking you through the attitudinal things in the face of maybe somebody doing harm to themselves or others or something like that. So when you asked Gianna, I was just thinking a bit daily life, just an exercise in that of how do I move directing my awareness in a certain way, just giving you some foundations with my attitude that you can mold into any circumstance like that. But what I would do is, this is more from just strict mindfulness, not really Dharma. It relates to the Dharma. And then having this basic meditation practice, inspiring, that builds with Shiné, that's based in the Lam Rim, something that I find really can better inform the choices that we're making and things like that. So that can help very much, yeah. And you can also ask a specific thing of, this is going on for me, how do I deal with this person, or this is happening, and sometimes we can apply it as well. Is that helpful? So, a few things. I'm trying to get to some of your different questions and things like that. And then what often happens with us that is opposed to mindfulness is we are on automatic pilot. Okay, we're an automatic pilot. I talked a bit about habit, creating new habits. Okay, so one of the things I think it's really something that you need to start to look at is what are general habits for you, things, and there's some things that are going on in your life that you're not satisfied with. So you could make a little list of those, or at least reflect on those, what things are not really working. Is it then linked to some sort of behavioral pattern that I have? Some sort of behavioral patterns. Like one thing I could say, I'll give you an example, this comes up in a lot of classes. I don't have time to meditate, people say. Okay. And then I'll say to them, are you on Facebook? And they're like, yeah. Okay? So if you're on Facebook, you have time to meditate. Okay? So they've got a behavioral pattern of social media, let's say. And then that gives you a story of, I can't create this new habit. The new habit in the beginning is going to be very hard to set up. That's the hardest part, the getting started. But what happens for people that I know that maybe watch a little bit too much TV, there's nothing wrong, first of all, with social media or television or reading novels or social recreation or exercise or anything. It's a matter of how much we do it. So it's kind of like everything in moderation, everything in moderation. But I do find people come and they say, well, I do watch TV and I watch too much and I feel guilty. So guilt is a negative cycling of the mind and has no beneficial purpose. So the time you're spending feeling guilty and then, not getting myself off the couch to start to initiate something different, all the time it's kind of an energy drain. And Lama Zopa Rinpoche once said, if you die with a mind of guilt, it's just really negative for you. It doesn't lead to anything better, because it doesn't do it. It's not regret. Regret could kind of, I think, consciously thinks about something with sadness of what I've done wrong, but intends to act, to change something then, okay? So I find the automatic pilot kind of, you could assess a little bit, what are you on automatic pilot? What am I doing with automatic pilot? And does that thing benefit me or not benefit me? Does it help me benefit others or not? And that's an assessment, a self-assessment you'd have to do on your own. Okay? And these are exercises I've done with people sometimes over 6 weeks, where you come back and it's like, you go home, you write them down, and then you decide to change one of them. So again, please proceed slowly. And one Lama said to me, slowly, but not too slowly. That's the practice, okay? So you don't want to be too slowly, but a little bit, to say I've got these 7 behavioral things that really aren't benefiting at all, I really want to stop them. I just give an example. Eating too many potato chips as snack food through the day and not having lunch. Watching too much TV. Reading trash novels. You could have your things, and you go, you can't change them all at once. Don't batter yourself like that. You might just say, hey, could I get into eating, what if I cut up carrots and whatever and have those as snack food and have them readily available in the refrigerator, so and I won't buy chips the next time at the store. I won't buy that big bag of chips. So it won't be there in my sight. So you make little adjustments. You say you're watching too much TV, assess it. Is it 3.5 hours a day or 2 hours a day? Can you reduce it by a half an hour? You go, but the shows are an hour long. Okay. Can you take one show out and watch it? Now, on your computer, you can get anything. You don't have to watch the show at that time that it's on, right? You can tape anything, record it, right? So is there something where you watch it on a day you may not be watching a show? You don't have a show on Friday. So that'll be my hour. I'm going to take that 2 hours, and one of those hours is going to go to Friday, so I free up an hour on Thursday. So be wise with yourself, with the practice, and make it possible that you can't change everything at once. Bite-sized chunks. Bite-sized chunks. There's some nice quotes I wanted to read in here that. And so here's the thing for Mark Twain. If you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got, right? Okay. So again, this is about automatic pilot. I'm there, this is how it's going, and this is how it's going to go. So Dharma centers are fantastic for making new Dharma friends who might be doing some new behaviors that you're very interested in cultivating in your own life. And we've had some really powerful groups that got going. I had a group in Santa Cruz on Monday nights, and sometimes there were like 50, 60 people. We met for years, and these people were strangers. They came together. It started with a group of like 10 or 15 people, became like a support group for people. And that was their only Dharma that they did. They showed up Monday night. They didn't do anything else. They started meditation practices, but they made friends in the group. And those friends became these friends that would support them, and they'd start to use stuff from the group when somebody was in trouble and somebody had a problem. And it was a really exciting way to practice. So I really find use these centers for the different things. Geshe-la's classes, some of you come to those. And find out about the person you're sitting next to, and you might have something in common with them. There's that refreshing curiosity, okay? So often with mindfulness and practices we often use the body as a focus in standard mindfulness practice. And that's why I said you can always bring everything back to the breath. Slightly different when I move into Tibetan Buddhism, okay? Because it's very mind-oriented. It's very mind-oriented. But there's no problem if you're doing a daily life practice and stuff. I did this when I said I was at this business meeting at this conference table, and I felt like some people were being unreasonable. I went back to the breath. I'm like, my mind is all confused and I'm kind of irritated with these people. So let me just get into my body right now. What's happening in my body? My body feels kind of tight, so I'm just going to have a few deep breaths. Always relaxes people, always gives you a little bit more sense of space and things like that. You can also notice, are there things going on in your body that are giving you other messages? An example, a close friend of mine who's from this area, she doesn't live here anymore, but she's from here. She came back to this area and was staying with her mother at one point. And it must have been a little bit difficult relationship. So she got this very bad pain in her neck, okay? And there was a book somebody showed me at a Dharma center. It wasn't a Dharma book, but somebody showed me the center of physical things that are related to mental situations. So if you have a pain in your neck, it's like something is a pain in the neck, okay? That expression, pain in the neck. So she started to get some healing treatment at these new age therapies, and one of them was, I think it was either Alexander technique or something else. I can't remember what it was. She went to, it wasn't Alexander technique, something like that, where he was going to do some body work with her to try to release this thing. And she's over in a corner of the room, and he said, yeah, you can take off your shawl or whatever, like that, and And she's over there, and she's like, got this big sweater on, and he just said to her, she's putting it on, and she notices she's putting it on the chair, and he said, so I heard you're living with your mother now, and she just went like, yeah, I am, like, and she saw it when that happened. She's like, okay, now I know why my neck hurts, like, okay, so your body can give you messages as well, and they're well heated if you're continuing to have something. Now, it's different than a medical problem. Obviously, you know when to go to the doctor, but I find some of that, what contributes to stress. The other thing that's really helpful you can do, and this isn't about Shiné, now this is just, I'm in the main full standard mindfulness stuff, is a pause, P-A-U-S-E, the pause. It's okay to pause. Okay, this is something that often disarms people, the pause. Simple little practice. It helps you step out of automatic pilot, is what it does, okay? And reconnect with the present moment, okay? It's especially useful when you're busy or when you're worrying about the future or caught up in the past, okay? And what this is, and I know that Thich Nhat Hanh uses the mindfulness bell in his communities. We did this, they tried this, at some of our Buddhist centers, we tried this for a while. He has a mindfulness bell. I think it rings every hour. I can't remember how we did it, but I think at his place it rings every hour. Whatever you are doing, you stop immediately. I mean, obviously if you're cooking, you just turn the burner off, you stop, okay? And it's just like I think it's a mindful minute. You just stop, and suddenly you notice, what's going on with my mind? It's not about what I'm doing. How's my mind right now? So you might notice that you're cooking with anger. Like you've been cooking retreat food for retreaters, but I'm irritated with somebody. And I'm like, and that's what's ruminating in my mind. I might notice I'm in the grocery store and I'm feeling really, really spacious here and kind of wanting to help somebody in the grocery store. I'm really happy shopping right now. Right? Just some present thing that helps bring you back. So what you're doing is, anytime you're training your mind to observe itself, which lends to more mindfulness, which means you will be more focused in daily life. So when you put your glasses down, there's my mind. Now I know where my glasses are. I can walk out of the room, but I know where my glasses are because I was there when I put them down. Or the pen, or the keys, or whatever. You'll know if you turned the burner off when you left the house, and you'll know if you locked the door, because you were there when you did it. And that's what we're trying to do, is build that in to moments. How it more relates in Buddhism is my everyday moments. If I'm more focused like that, I'm going to be much more watchful. If I'm noticing a moment of irritation coming up, then I'm going to be very vigilant with my mouth, not to open my mouth in a less than generous way. Right? Not to say something snippy then, because I'm feeling a little stressed right now. Because suddenly I noticed I'm feeling a little stressed. Automatic pilot is lash out at somebody. That's automatic pilot. Why? I dropped my mindfulness. If my mindfulness brought me back to, because I said focus on the body, I'm feeling a little tight right now. Okay. So I'm going to stop the automatic pilot through the pause, and I'm going to start breathing. You know, I'm very irritated with that person right now. I'm ready to just say something really rude to them. No benefit there. No benefit in doing that. So that's going to help me refrain from, so again, you have to introduce, reintroduce, and introduce it again to make a new pattern. Is everybody with me? Possible? It's exciting, too. It's exciting when you can do it. And so if you're breathing, I'm just going to focus on the air going in and the air coming out. And take us, if you need 3, if you need 4. I mentioned before in a class before, how I had come back from a couple years in India. I'd really doing a lot of retreat, and I was in San Francisco living. I had opted to, it was the first time I was living in a Dharma center, so it was a big life change. Before that, I had my career, I had my money, I had my apartment. So now I was living with one other person in our San Francisco center. It was in her home at that point. And because she was a full-time mechanical engineer, she was a nun. I was not a nun, but we made a decision, and I was going to work 2 weeks a month to support the center, and she gave me a place to stay for free. And then when the lamas and teachers came, I would be free to be there for them and help them. So we made this arrangement. I was happy to do it. So what could I do 2 weeks a month? What kind of job could I get? So I decided to temp. And temping, you know, for those of you that have temped, you're kind of at the lower bottom of the ladder in a lot of offices. I was temping in law firms. And the law firms, they paid me very, very well. I was like a high-level temp, whatever. But I had this career before. So I started, my mind was telling me it was like, I didn't value myself. But it was my choice to work at a Dharma center. And I really wanted to do that, and I really enjoyed it. You know, but there was something about me when I went out in that world that wasn't feeling worthy enough because of my low self-esteem. Okay? So this was all little things playing into this. So I had a motivation every morning to try to get enlightened, to do my practice and develop the good heart, so I get enlightened quickly to benefit all living beings. It's a Tibetan Buddhist motivation, standard. All living beings, okay? And if you listen to Lama Zopa Rinpoche on any live stream, our main teacher, this man right here, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, okay? He'll even say, you know, all sentient beings, all living beings, okay? Emphasis on all, okay? What we do is we're signed up for all the people we like, and then as soon as you interfere with my agenda, I'm not here to benefit you. I've just lost my motivation. I worked for this lawyer. They paired me with this lawyer, Ted, who was a nice guy. And but somehow because of this thing of I didn't want to be a secretary, I didn't really see myself in this role, which I had chosen. But somehow he came out, and what he would do on Monday mornings, he'd come out with this disgusting moldy coffee mug that had been left all weekend with coffee growing, and then he wanted me to wash it. I didn't see that as my role, right? If I saw him as a friend, I would happily wash it, your friend. But it was kind of this block in my mind, is all I'm saying, okay? So what would happen is this stupid little incident would get me stressed because I had different ideas about what I thought I should do, and I wasn't being present with what I had chosen. Like that. So what I did is I did learn, at least when I'd start to get stressed, and my mind, all the doors and windows shutting, and me starting to layer some stuff on Ted, this disgusting, rude guy that comes out and expects me to clean his moldy coffee mug Monday mornings. I don't think that's on my job description, or, you know, this stuff. So I managed to get myself into the bathroom. My pause. My automatic pilot was to let that negative mind to go on about him. So I got to pause. I went in the bathroom. Nobody bothers you in there. Breathe. And the first breath is always like, you know, like I was, you know, just adjusting to being, I was in India for 2 years, and this wasn't what I had intended or thought about doing, making this transition. It was quite hard transitioning, working to a Dharma center, and it's been the best thing I ever did, okay? But initially, so then I breath, and then after the third or fourth breath, I remembered, I was like, oh, my motivation. I had a motivation this morning to be a benefit to all living beings, except Ted, right? That's what I was doing now, everybody but him. What was wrong with him? Seriously, right? What was wrong with him? There wasn't anything, and then when I really, this is 2 minutes in the bathroom, whether you're going to the bathroom or not, 2 minutes in there. So I was like, well, what's really wrong with Ted? He was always polite to me. He was a good attorney. He was ethical. The other partners liked him. What was really wrong with him? There wasn't really the coffee mug. Well, he was old school. He was from a different generation. So for him, that was like a norm for him. The days of my dad, the secretaries, they took your dry cleaning, they babysat your kids, they got you puppies if you wanted a puppy for your family. They did all these things. That was like a given. So him, one little gesture, he never asked me to do anything else, just this coffee mug, that was what he thought was a normal thing. So was it really a problem? What if he was my friend? I'd happily wash the cup out for him. So I kind of had a little analysis. Then I come back out, I reestablish my motivation due to the mindfulness exercise, and I come back out, and I'm happier to serve him. Okay? So I tried, and then through my little fresh curiosity beginner's mind, there's something new I could discover about Ted, and I did. And I met his wife, and I found out he had moved from a different city to help this office start. He preferred living where he used to live, but he did this. Obviously, they were paying him good money, but he was also uprooted, wasn't all that comfortable living in San Francisco, and it was interesting talking to him. I got to know him, and I got to be friends with him, and I really liked him, okay? So we fast forward. We're about a month later now. I'm working with him. We're getting on great. And one Monday morning, he comes out, Monday morning, with the mug. I'm anticipating the mug. Why? Because now I want to wash it out. I really do. This is about mind transformation. That's what we're doing in Buddhism. I want the mug. I want to clean his mug, because he's my friend. I want to help him out. And what I do is I come out, he's got it in his hand, and this was our morning routine Monday. He says, how was your weekend? Did you do anything interesting? And I said, oh yeah, I had a great weekend. And I said, how was your weekend? I said, did your wife come up this weekend, or was that last weekend? We have this little exchange, and I'm starting to reach out for his mug, and he goes, oh, this is disgusting. I'm not gonna have you wash this. Oh, and then there we are fighting over who's going to wash the mug. Seriously. So it's possible to transform those situations. We really want to make friends with everybody on the planet, and you can. You can. It's your choice. Okay? I can be dug in and sit in my automatic pilot and be happy with that, or you can have some refreshing curiosity to try to move out of it. Does it take effort? Yes, it does. But it's so worth it. It's much more pleasant to go around the planet if you're friends with more people than having aversion. It's an exercise. So the pause is always there. Stop and breathe and just get a look at what's going on right now. I'm having a meltdown. It's okay to just say, I'm having a meltdown. Take yourself away. Take yourself away. Milarepa Center. Okay, I went through a period, my mother died. I had a lot of stress with the center. Had various hormonal things going on in my body, okay? So all of a sudden I noticed at one point, feeling like I'm gonna yell at somebody. I don't wanna do that. So I noticed these experiences based on just having a pause and watching my mind, and I could quickly just move into another room till it would pass. These moments pass. It wouldn't last very long, but I could just get into another room, look out the window and be like, everything's okay. And then I could come back in the room. So that's your wisdom operating and compassion that you want to develop a bit. Okay, so slowly, slowly. The hardest part of the practice is remembering to do it, okay? So some suggestions, I've mentioned this before in other classes, okay? You could put, here's an example, sticky dots around your home or your workplace and commit to pausing whenever you see one of them as you go about your day. Little colored dots. Put them in strategic places and you see it and that's your pause. You could have a timer. Put a timer on your phone, on a clock, on a thing. And the mindfulness bell at the center, it rang. Gong! Everybody would hear it. Big property. You just stop. Like that. So you could have a little chime that goes on in your phone. Set it at your own time. Maybe you don't have once an hour. Maybe it's once every 2 hours. But you start to notice, am I well motivated? What's going on in my mind right now? It just helps you to watch a little bit. Okay? Or you can choose to pause at a specific time during the day. You could say, when I first wake up, that's going to be a little mindfulness moment. You know, when I have my coffee in the morning, I'm going to make sure I pause there and have a little look at what's my attitude, what's going on. It could be when I read my email, when I sit down at my desk, when I wash my hands after I go to the bathroom. That's my mindfulness moment. Make your own moment. Or you can just choose to do it at a particular moment you need it. I'm feeling really speedy right now. You know, I'm grasping onto this food right now. I'm having a total food addict attack right now. So maybe I'll just stop and pause, or I'm getting upset at somebody, okay? So all you're doing is you're going to take a few moments, pause, breathe, relax, and bring some awareness to the breath. See if you get a sense of what's going on in your mind. Bless you. So developing the habit of stopping and pausing is helpful in enabling us to interrupt automatic habits and to come back to the present moment. So as far as, I think Ginny was saying this, being attentive in meditation. Ginny? Yeah, right there. That's being attentive in meditation. And the dullness, I mentioned the antidote before of different ways to brighten up the mind. But this also lends to being attentive in meditation more, trying to follow what is going on as we exercise a little bit more. Certainly helps with being more mindful in daily life, like that. Okay. Let's see if we get, and integrating into daily life. I think Doug had mentioned that as well. All of these are very related to how do I integrate the practice. Let me go into, let's try another Shiné session. I think we've had a little space we're going to go till about 5 today, so we're going to take a little break in a little bit, and then you can, if you want to stand up right now and stretch in place, just stand up, and then we'll sit down and have a little bit more concentration. And I love this from Sharon Salzberg. She's a great teacher in this area and all over the world. The entire art of meditation practice is knowing how to begin again. Okay? The entire art of meditation practice is knowing how to begin again. Huge. So for me, I've been at it maybe, you might say, a little longer than some of you, but not all of you. And every day it's begin again. Every day it's like back on my cushion. Sometimes it gets boring. That's part of the practice. So I'm doing the same things every day, but then little shifts come. Like that. If you need to, just feel free to take a couple of deep breaths. And allow your awareness to settle on the breath. And we're going to do 2 5-minute Shiné sessions. And you just try your best. There's no competition here. But just find some comfort in the physical body right now in this position. I'm going to give you an object on which to meditate. You can try. So focus on a radiant golden drop of light that is just outside the nostrils where the air enters in and leaves the body. Little tiny golden drop of light. Place all of your concentration there. And if you find you're losing the object, you can brighten the intensity of the light. See if that might help you focus better and stay concentrated. Or if you're satisfied with your own object, stay with that. And just think in your mind right now for the next 5 minutes, I'm going to keep my mind focused on this object without my mind wandering. And begin. Please relax. Take your mind off the object. So you can open your eyes and look around the room. When you're starting to do sessions, if you want to do on your own, it's good to keep them very short. You can just remain in your seat. Take a little break. 30 seconds or a minute, a couple minutes. And then you set a determination and back on the object. That. So getting clear on that object, if you'd like to choose that radiant golden drop of light, just at the tip of the nostrils. And determine for the next 5 minutes, this is what I'm doing. Directing your awareness in that way, I will keep my mind focused on this object without my mind wandering. And begin. Please relax. You can open your eyes. How's it going? Was the drop more helpful? Some people, sometimes it's a nice tool to try. Or you can experiment with other objects you want to meditate on. Don't get too caught up again in the object. But, it's nice that you could try that drop and brighten the intensity, try to keep it a little clearer. And then maybe if you're good with that, you could move on to like an image of the Buddha or something, or you could try that. What happens with tantric practices is we've had initiation, which means through a visualization process and a ceremony, you're given permission to form a closer relationship with a certain aspect of the Buddha, a deity, okay? And they represent different things. And a lama, a qualified teacher, can go through some sort of initiation in either an hour or two, or sometimes 2-day process for highest yoga tantra. And at some point in that process, once you're given the initiation and the permission, you would do a practice according to that deity, things they called a sadhana, a method of method of accomplishment. Sadhana, a Sanskrit word, method of accomplishment. And they're all set up relatively the same. First, a good motivation, and there's certain preliminary prayers, and there's a visualization. And at one point, you would visualize yourself as that deity to do certain mantras and things. So until you've had proper initiation, you wouldn't visualize yourself that way. But once you have, and so some people use that as their object of meditation, because you're trying to use Shiné in the sadhana, like that, or the sadhana, like that. So that's a way you can combine the practices and then use the concentration in there. As far as Dzogchen, and I don't know if I could say enough about Dzogchen right now. I need to kind of refresh myself on the teachings I've had. Mahamudra, this is a question Doug had, is how does Shiné relate to Mahamudra practice in Dzogchen? Shiné is a method, and so Mahamudra technically is a practice about the emptiness of the mind, more like that. There's a beautiful book on the Gelug Kagyu tradition of Mahamudra, but it's for highest yoga tantra initiates to read it. The introduction you could read by Alex Berzin, that's very nice, a little bit about the nature mind. But so basically, if you're looking at the nature of your consciousness, which is this spacious, clear awareness, and meditating on the emptiness of that is more related to Mahamudra. Shiné is simply concentration. So you could use that to do that meditation. Dzogchen is a little bit more of direct perception, and so slightly different. And let me just see if I can read a little bit. There's many different Dzogchen books. There's a teaching I went to with His Holiness, like in 1989, I think, and there's a book that came out about that that's really brilliant about Dzogchen. But Namkhai Norbu teaches a lot about Dzogchen practice from the Nyingma or Nyingmapa tradition. Just a little bit about when you're doing Dzogchen practice, your impure vision disappears. And this is in the real essence of it. When you start to practice, you're working on it. You don't have that vision yet, but any impure vision disappears. When you're in a state of contemplation, meaning meditation, there's no concept of pure or impure. So in a sense, it could be somewhat related to emptiness or non-duality. What you get, there's just this direct, raw awareness in that sense. Self-liberation, they might call it, transformation, self-liberation as transformation. And what they're saying is you're proceeding from a concept of pure and impure vision, which is normally the way we see things, okay? And it says here, using an example of a mirror, in the Dzogchen teaching, we use a symbol of the mirror in order to have knowledge and understanding. Because a mirror, you must observe yourself, not just look at objects, judging and thinking this is good or bad, this is pure or impure. When you have this concept of good and bad, impure, it's dualistic. There's two things going on. You overcome this, you observe yourself instead. Instead of looking at the objects, you observe yourself. If you look in the mirror, you see your face, your existence, okay? In this way, you can discover, for example, what your face looks like. It means you're observing yourself, and you can discover your limitations, your condition, your existence. In general, we don't observe ourselves, but let me see if I can go on with. It's kind of, in a sense, I don't have a lot of time to go into, but about getting beyond the dualistic vision of the pure impure. And so on some level, I think it relates for me more, not just emptiness, but getting a direct perception of emptiness. And then I would say in the 5 stages to become a Buddha, for instance, one of the stages is the path of meditation. And once you've had a direct perception of emptiness, which is the 3rd stage, the path of seeing, you move into the path of meditation where you're trying to soak your mind thoroughly in what you saw, in what you experienced. Because when you come out of the path of seeing, you've had a direct perception of emptiness, I'll talk more about this tomorrow, you've seen something directly, you've seen the truth directly. You have all these realizations after that moment, okay? But when you come out of the meditation, everything goes back to the way it was, but now you know. Now you know that things don't exist the way they're appearing to you. Does that make sense? So I'd say on some level, Dzogchen isn't exactly like that, but it relates more to that, getting beyond the non-duality where we see things as like good, bad, solidly existing wall when it actually exists as a lot of molecules moving in a certain configuration, like that. But I don't feel like I can speak more about it because I don't know enough.
It wasn't actually details that I was looking for. It was more just, you actually answered it in regards to the fact that Shiné
Is concentration.
that is used in both Dzogchen, Mahamudra, Zen. It's
Yes.
almost kind of, that's the thing that they're using to get to
That you would use as the level of concentration to develop these higher, Dzogchen and Mahamudra are high-level practices that you would go into after building on a good foundation in the Lam Rim or whenever. In the Nyingma Poch, it's Words of My Perfect Teacher, is their Lam Rim, the philosophy. You want to get some background in that, then you build on higher level practices like that. Okay, let me go calming the mind before sleep, Martina, okay? And Carol, yep, you had said also about calming your mind in general, okay? Calming the mind before sleep, there's some practical things, I bet you're already doing these, okay? Practicality is try to get off your technology. They say now 2 hours before going to bed. Okay, that's hard for people. I as a traveler, I found this most incredible library app. Are you familiar with Overdrive? Anybody familiar with that? It's my favorite thing in the entire world right now, okay? Oh my gosh. So I joined the library at my father's, which is my first library as a kid. Joined that library. And so what happens is now when I'm on the road in any country, I have this app on my phone, and it allows me to, for free, borrow library books that are connected to that library on my phone. So a lot of current books you can find, classics you can find. You don't have to go to Amazon and buy them. And you get that for 2 or 3 weeks. You can order books and hold them. You can hold up to 10 books, and it tells you exactly what order they're in. And so sometimes I go to bed reading on my phone. I've gotten used to it. The one thing about it is sometimes I'm reading a big book, holding it up, and I fall asleep and it hits me in the face. Doesn't happen with my phone, and the phone has an automatic light. So if I'm sharing a dorm room with other nuns and stuff, sometimes the light still, people see it, but it's not like having a light on in the room, and I can see it, and I don't need a headlamp or something else to light it up. So there are some advantages. However, all I'm doing is reading, and I've done little exercises. I found it doesn't really bother me that much as far as falling asleep. It makes me drowsy to read before I go to sleep. And it's a habit I have. I like to read before I go to bed, if I can, if I'm not too tired and like that. Other things I've done on my computer and on the phone or on a device, too close to going to bed, I find my brain is buzzing. So again, do your own experiment. If that's something going on for you, I don't know. You could try to minimize that. I also found for those of you that are email addicts or messaging people, I don't check email at night, like before I go to bed, because that message comes flying through that you really didn't need to hear, and now my mind is busy with it. What about that? I should have said that. Why did she send that? What did they mean? And email's funny anyway. Email's funny anyway. We just had a funny experience because of this email. So there was a guy that told me he was going to be here, but I didn't know that he just flew back from overseas and he's really tired. He's an old friend. Okay, he was on a pilgrimage with me. He's a great guy. So he's in the area now, and he said he was going to be here today. So when the first break we took, because this stuff would have been perfect for him, but he can listen to it later, right? But on the first break we took, I went back and I sent him a little message and just said, where are you? This would be perfect for you. So apparently he showed up. He got the message and he showed up here, but we were in a session and Marianne said, oh, they're in a meditation. Can you just hang on? They're going to take a break. And then he left. Like, so in email, he didn't really get my joke because you can't read jokes. And when I just said, where are you? Like, maybe he thought, where are you? You should, but I was kind of like, hey, where are you? I thought, I was hoping to see you today. And that's all. It was light for me. It had no charge to it. But so you have to be careful with that. And the other things are you might find practically activities to do before you go to bed that calm you down. Americans aren't a bathing culture. I take baths. I really like baths. I find that we're shower kind of people. Some people don't even have decent bathtubs in their houses. Okay, some people find a bath. Some people might not exercise late at night or watch an exciting program on TV because it gets them to a bath. Some people having certain foods, like it used to be a thing of drinking hot warm milk. It used to put people to sleep. Something, some people have the little Bach flower remedy, the rescue remedy, couple dropperfuls, kind of chills. It's just an herbal, natural remedy like that. So you might find different things of getting into bed earlier so that, and maybe there's also a thing of not watching the clock all the time. I'm still awake and now another 15 minutes is, turn the clock around. Don't keep looking at the clock of how long you're lying there. And there's also counting the breaths as you're lying in bed. People say counting sheep. It's similar. Just counting slowly without this big attachment to having to fall asleep right now. Certain things like that can be, and then you can bring a concentration. Maybe you're focusing on the little drop while you're lying in bed, Maybe you have a dedication for sleeping. I need to sleep for my health. So I really hope I wake up tomorrow energized, as alert as possible, as awake as possible, because I'd really like to be able to go through my day with more mindfulness, building compassion and wisdom that will help me move along a path to full awakening as quickly as possible, right? So I can be of the most benefit for all others, and with that motivation to benefit all others, I am now going to practice the yoga of sleeping. And then go to sleep. So the sleep becomes even a virtuous activity based on your motivation. No motivation like that, no benefit. Just sleep. Okay? Positive motivation like that, then some virtue can be planted. If you go to sleep in anger, then that motivation gets activated. Leaves some imprints like that. So I don't know, maybe a little bit like that. In general, calming the mind, it's again, begin again. It's a continual getting on the cushion, analyzing what's disturbing the mind at any given time, but the exercises I've been talking about is just sitting down and doing it again and again and again. And I would say some purification practices, if you can do or learn them, enormously helpful, like Vajrasattva in the evening, prostrations, learning how to do them with the proper prayers, and mantra recitation can, suddenly my mind's agitated in a meditation session or I'm on retreat, I might just start counting mantras. I can't do anything else right now. My mind's too distracted. Om Mani Padme Hum, the mantra, the Buddha compassion, beautiful mantra. You could visualize that Buddha of compassion or the Dalai Lama is said to embody him in front of you, and have light rays just showering down a little bit, just help me to, you can do it with Vajrasattva. If I'm doing this Vajrasattva practice to purify negativities, I would right now like to focus on lessening some distraction in my mind. Feeling really scattered right now, really this is what I'm going to focus on in this particular little Vajrasattva 10 minutes. Fantastic. So little things that could help like that. And slowly, there isn't enough time in this class, but some more mindfulness techniques, because they build over time, and there's many more techniques about noting, about getting out of that the tendency of the automatic pilot, where the mind there's people I know that suffer from anxiety. So things like that, worriers. So they have habits, somebody very close to me has a habit where they have to worry about something. They just have to. Why? Because that's what they always have something to worry about. They don't have to, actually, but it's in there. It's kind of their thing. And I notice how, what's really interesting, and one of them I was doing some exercises with, and they were saying, somebody in their 20s, and they had this to worry about and that to worry about. And I said, and then you're going to get the job. I said, they've offered you the job. You have the job now. I said, so now what are you going to worry about? And he looked at me and he said, I'm not really worried about anything now. And I said, okay, good. I said, you see, it's possible. Like now but then he found something quickly that replaced it, something that was mundane. And I said, it's interesting. I said, because it's really mundane. It doesn't really matter, that thing that you're worried about now, does it? And he said, no. And I said, so you actually have experiences in your mind when you're not worrying. So that's important for people that suffer from anxiety, that have anxiety attacks and worry, and for people with depression, chronic depression. To remind somebody with chronic depression, they can often remember a time in their mind when they weren't depressed. There was a time they weren't depressed, and they can go back in there and go, oh yeah, even if it was 40 years ago, there was an experience in their mind when they weren't depressed. So that's significant to bring that up for people. So let's take a 15-minute break. I think some people need to go to the bathroom and things. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do some Tonglen meditation. I want to take some questions, and we'll talk a little bit more about developing more awareness, mindfulness, and becoming more awake. So feel free to take a break. If you can keep it in silence a little bit, reflecting on, we only have like a half an hour left, so. Doug had a question earlier about the cultural trappings and mantras, and when you're doing a practice, and I think this is what you meant, and it's not in your language, so you're trying to find your way into it of the significance.
Well, even the translations aren't, they're in my language, but they're not in my cultural context.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of the things that are translated from Tibetan or Sanskrit really relate to my understanding of the world or who I am.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just throw something like something as crazy as like the qualified unqualified consort or something like that.
Mhm.
Something as simple like what does that even?
Right. So slowly what I've done in prayers, if I don't understand, I'd ask somebody, like, what are the 4 spheres and what are the 3 of this and what does that mean? And so then slowly I started to understand. I know some people that have rewrote prayers for their liking that speaks to them, and some people aren't into the prayers as much. So everything resonates slightly differently with different people. I know last night we had a puja, which is a type of ceremony, and it's based on the Tibetan it's a lunar calendar, so there's certain days we observe certain things. Wednesday night I'm leading a medicine Buddha practice here, and it takes basically an hour. We read it in English. We invoke all the 7 medicine Buddhas to come here and be with us to help. It's a healing practice. So some people show up for all the pujas and they never come to classes. They just want the pujas. They're, more ritualistic things. Some people don't like any pujas and they just come to classes. Some people prefer to study on their own. Some people just want to do meditation retreats. And so there's a little something for everybody. And I used to try to understand what do they mean and then try to get it in. And if it was a sense where I could meditate through something in my own practice, once I knew what that meant, then it had more meaning for me like that.
And it is acceptable to be able to maybe rework it into something that my mind would accept?
You could, as long as it's accurate of what it means, sure. Because there's different translations of, various books. And like, for instance, no offense, I'm going to have lunch with Tim McNeil this week of Wisdom Publications. So no, I love Wisdom Publications, our publisher. They're fantastic. This is from a different publisher, okay? So it's the same teaching that was done. This is from a unbelievable teaching that was done, I think I'm going to say in 1945, by Kabji Pabonka Rinpoche in Lhasa, I think it was. I had a teacher that was there at that teaching. He said Pabonka Rinpoche levitated off the throne during this teaching. I can't say that I know that happened, but I have a lot of faith in that teacher. And so Wisdom Publications has a fantastic 1-volume version of that teaching, passed down through His Holiness Trijang Rinpoche, who was at the teaching, and like that, 1-volume version. Some people like it because it's kind of like the Bible. You got your volume, and there you got everything in there. I happen to like this translation better. Just different translation. This works for me better, but this is in 3 volumes. This is volume 3 with 2 other volumes, so it's a little bit bigger, but I happen to prefer that one. So there are different translations, and sometimes it's more formal, and if you get to Robert Thurman's translations, Bob Thurman, he's got really kind of out-of-worldly kind of other ways of expressing things that resonate with some people.
I like Ken McLeod too, if you're familiar with him.
Yes, Ken McLeod, mm-hmm.
He just did
Sure.
a translation on the 37 practices of
Bodhisattvas, and I know Alex Berzin has different word terminology that he's used, John Landau. These are all friends, John Landau's a good friend of mine, an author, who has certain terms that they'll use. So certainly as long as it's accurate and you're not getting too far off the thing like that. And some practices, there's a lot of prayers and practices, but once you understand the essence of it, if there's a way to meditate through it, that's even more effective. But if you have certain commitments to recite something daily, there can be an importance to reciting something. And the recitation and mantras have a certain energy. So it's not necessarily specifically what every syllable means, but it is about articulating each syllable clearly. But ultimately, on a more subtle level, early on we did the meditation of the 3 channels, and on a subtle level it reverberates. And it has an effect even if we can't really experience it on that level. I think on some level it does slowly make a difference and open up the channels and the chakras and things like that. I think I got through all the different things you brought up. I just want to ask before we go into this final meditation, is there something you didn't hear, you need to know about? Any other questions, comments, anything like that? Yes.
Can you maybe put in context in relationship with like the Shiné practice and like Theravada and Vipassana? Like, did they just fold? I mean, in Tibetan Buddhism, I see them as very distinct practices in different stages. But it's, to me, in the Theravadan tradition, it seems like the Shiné is kind of folded into Vipassana as a single type of exercise, where it is not in the Tibetan tradition.
Sure, the Theravada tradition, which is the Buddhism from Thailand and Sri Lanka and Cambodia and trying to think of other Theravadan countries where the Buddhism came. Burma, thank you. So the Thai forest tradition, which I think kind of came from the Burmese tradition, really, it's very popularly practiced in the States. And they'll have 9 to 10 day retreats, which work ideally for us because you take 1 week off with 2 weekends or partial weekends. And we used to host one at one of our centers, and there's many Western teachers, and now they're all basically these organizations run by Western teachers. So Sharon Salzberg founded, with Joseph Goldstein, IMS, Insight Meditation Society, which is in Barre, Massachusetts. Its Western counterpart is in Northern California, Spirit Meditation Center. And I'm familiar with the teachers there and those centers. I've been to both of those centers. You're mostly focusing on awareness of the breath, awareness of the body, very related to some of the mindfulness techniques, but not totally that. Sharon Salzberg teaches a lot of loving kindness, a lot of metta meditation, and a lot of it's derived from some of the teachers, like for Jack Kornfield was, I think, Ajahn Chah, these incredible Theravada teachers. He's passed away, but Thai forest tradition. There's also some monasteries that have come up from that tradition. I visited in Northern California. There's Abhayagiri, and in its counterpart in England is Amaravati, and they have many Theravadan monasteries generally for monastics, male and female in that tradition. They wear golden-colored robes, different than mine, and there are many lay people that support and practice at these centers, and they're well supported. And I'd say they're monastic places, and they're much better supported than our monastic situation for Westerners, which is very minimal in the FPMT, unfortunately. So, and now that this is on the airwaves, I'll probably be fired. So, okay, for saying that, but it's true. So, it's often quite a struggle being a Western monk or nun in our culture because there's no support. It's very difficult, and we don't really have places to live and things like that, unless you're assigned to a center. And so, beautiful tradition, which is about getting yourself liberated, getting yourself free from suffering, and that's their focus. And it's not that one is better than the other. They call them sometimes Hinayana, lesser vehicle. Ours is Mahayana, greater vehicle. It's not that one is better than the other. It's just they're focused on getting themselves out of the cycle of suffering. We're focused on getting ourselves out of the cycle of suffering to reach nirvana or liberation as well, which is their enlightenment, but so that we can then get fully enlightened to benefit all others. They would say bodhicitta isn't as contained in theirs of this wish to get enlightened to benefit others, but those practitioners also have an amazing good heart, and Ajahn Chah, I think, was a Buddha, and some of the monks and nuns I've met in those traditions are amazing. So I'd say concentration, our Shiné, could be related to focusing on the breath, if you're just focusing on the breath. If you're not doing awareness of the body, then I say it's quite related and rolled in, but sometimes they're not focused on one thing, they're actually, okay, now I swallowed, now I have pain in the hip, now so that's a little different. In Shiné, you're not moving around like that. You're focused on one thing, which would be my right shoulder. I have pain in my right shoulder, I'm just gonna focus on that, and you'd stay there. And then, now normally you wouldn't focus on pain in the right shoulder necessarily unless you're trying to shift the pain or something. But usually the Shiné is totally about placement on one thing. And if you do have an object and you're finding, and some people ask me these questions, we didn't go into heavily with Shiné as much, but sometimes people say, my object is turning. My object is, I'm noticing my body. I wake up and I'm like this. It's just from the winds. You're exercising winds in your body on a subtle level. Okay, we have gross winds. This is a gross wind. You know, you can almost see it, you can hear it, but there's subtle winds operating in the body now that allow me to speak, blink my eyes, turn my head, sit down, stay upright, okay? So as you're meditating, you start to access and use those winds, and you move them in different ways. You're not aware of it, though, because they're subtle. That's why they're called subtle. And that'll start to have different experiences and sensations in the body that can be quite normal. If you're finding it's greatly disturbing your body in a painful way, I would back off and talk to a teacher about, you know, what's going on and things like that. So some people in Shiné, when they're holding an object as well, they find the object's moving. That's just distraction. So you're trying to hold on to a still object, keeping the object focused. Like I'm keeping it in one place, not moving, and that's just the minded distraction that comes up. That'll try to move it around, turn it around, and is that helpful, Lucas?
Yeah, I guess what I've never been able to really tease apart is like, you know, in terms of instruction. So for, you know, shamatha, once you get like 7, 8, 9, and you're starting to, the mind becomes more your object. Is it true, like, or am I understanding it more in like, in the Theravada tradition, they're starting to call that vipassana?
In the Theravada tradition,
That would be, that like is folded into like vipassana, right? Where
yes, I mean, the
the
7th to 9 level of Shiné isn't necessarily focused on the nature mind. Not necessarily. You could have other objects.
Mm-hmm. But in the instructions in the Theravada, that starts to become vipassana. Is this the way I understand it? Do you know what I mean? Whereas
yes.
in Tibetan, it's a very distinct after
yes.
9. Then the vipassana in the Tibetan tradition is a very different type of meditation than the
yes,
shamatha.
They're very different.
Whereas
in that respect, they're very different.
The shamatha kind of oozes into their vipassana.
Yeah, it's kind of like their vipassana method, and I wouldn't even call it really Shiné. Mm-hmm. Necessarily, because right. Shiné is more distinct.
Right, okay.
And it is different, yes. So in that sense, it's very different, because what we're then focused on is using the shamatha or the Shiné to meditate on emptiness.
Right, okay. Because the instructions are very similar in the beginning stages.
In the beginning stages, they are.
And then it becomes, okay, yes.
They're very similar in the beginning, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you.
Yeah. Did you have another question?
I was just wondering if there's time if we can maybe look at this. This is the biggest image I have, and they don't have a larger one.
Uh-huh.
Is that possible?
Yeah, and that's actually the path to meditation, what Lucas has, if you want to hold that up. It's great. I thought they had one on the wall here at one point,
no,
but maybe other centers.
I asked, but they don't, so.
It's great, and it just shows you the path of, it's an elephant that's going up the hill, or is it the?
And a monkey and a monk.
Yeah, and what they're just showing you, if you want to bring it up, thank you. It's kind of famous, the, oh, watch your foot there, great. This is showing, I believe, I can't remember the specifics about this, but and I get, it's a little racist, frankly, in our culture, so I'm a little careful about the dark and the light and the black and the white, and we have to be somewhat careful, but the Tibetans didn't mean it from that space, but I have been a little bit more sensitized because of the black and white issues in America, per se. But basically, you have this dark elephant, and as it's gaining more control over its mind, okay, it becomes more light, and I can't remember the specific things about it, but it's all about the meditative mind and how you're cleaning aspects of the mind until you can get enlightened. There is usually, you could look it up online, the specifics of what it's talking about, the different stages. And I think it's relating to the different phases of Shiné.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And you know what I can do? Because I have this right here. Let's see if I can give you a little bit more explanation, and if it takes up too much time, I can talk with you after. Excuse me one sec, let me just see if I can. See if I can find anything. Okay. meditation. Tibetan elephant taming picture series. I just wanted to get a little bit more explanation, see if it. Calm abiding represented as a painting meditation. The 9 stages of abiding. Tibetan taming the elephant. Key elements: the monk holding an elephant and a lasso is the individual. He's got like a reins, I think, in the bottom. The flame represents effort. Okay, so there's a flame in between here. So, and it's in front of the elephant. There's a fire. So that's your effort. The elephant represents the mind. The black elephant colors the mental factor of sinking, lethargy, I was saying laxity, dullness. Okay? The black monkey colors the mental factor of scattering or excitement. That's the other option. You're running out after things. Okay, that's the monkey. And I'll pass this around afterwards. The 5 objects of sensory pleasure are the object of distraction. And so they do have here sensory, it would be, I'm trying to see somebody with food. Usually the sensory objects would be taste, touch. I'm just trying to see where they've kind of, I'm not sure what represents those in here. I'm not seeing it as clearly. I see somebody with a food bowl, touch like that, okay. The rabbit represents subtle sinking lethargy. So I mentioned there was gross excitement and gross sinking, and there's also subtle excitement and subtle sinking. Let me see if I can find any more else. Okay, the idea of relating the mind to an unruly elephant along with the monkey and other elements is, in the visual example, calm, abiding meditation, originates in the writings of a Sangha and later in the meditation commentaries of Je Tsongkhapa, who's our patron saint. It's thought that the artistic depiction of the practice is relatively late and possibly first arose in the 19th century as a wall mural. The image above, it's a poster published in India in the early 1970s. Okay, so some of it came in, and let me just see if I can find anything else here. Oh, great, they wrote it all in Tibetan. Okay, let's see if I can identify. But that's just the gist. If you want more, I could give you more on that. But let me pass this around. Thank you for bringing that. Do you want to just pass that, Doug, around the, that gives you the gist of it. And I could give you certain things of, there's the first is the force of hearing, first stage of meditation, where you have to hear the instructions, okay? So, and they have numbers, so that first force of hearing is at the bottom with 1 where you see a monk, and I don't even know if they have somebody teaching him, but that would be all subsumed there, steps 1, 2, and 3. 2 is fixing the mind on the object of concentration, the force of recollection. So they're just kind of giving you things of when you first get the instructions on Shiné. You have to hear it, and then you fix your mind on the object of concentration, and then the force of recollection called mindfulness, which we were trying to do anyway, is when your mind went off, you bring your mind back. So those are first couple of instructions of what you learn. And so it goes through the different, the elephant is the mind, and then it goes through the different stages that they walk up that path like that. That's nice. And then you have, at the end, perfect equanimity, the ecstasy. You have great bliss in your body when you achieve Shiné. Great mental and physical bliss. And first you have the pleasure in the body, and then when you attain Shiné, you have ecstasy in the mind. Can you imagine? Right? Something to shoot for. Anyway, thank you. Any other questions or something that, and I know this is a rather short day, so, and it's already 5 o'clock, so, okay, why don't we just try a quick, this is a variation on Tonglen. Tonglen is taking and giving. Taking and giving, you often hear of it as giving and taking, it's the same, but you first have to take the suffering from others before you can give them any happiness. And I will, I'm going to lead this. There's variations on this practice, but I'm going to lead it right now in reference to ourselves, okay? Because normally you start in with all living beings. It's very hard also for newcomers to have this idea of all living beings. So I find I work my way up in this meditation. But right now we just have a little bit of time, so I'm going to just do this Tonglen meditation. And let me explain. You're going to visualize at your heart center, and I'll lead you through it, is all your self-cherishing, all your selfishness, self-absorption. And that's just going to be like a constricted knot at your heart, at the heart center. So it's not in the organ, the heart, it's just kind of at your core. So please relax and sit comfortably. And you can close your eyes. And first, just bring your awareness to that normal, natural breath again to settle the mind. And do imagine at your heart center is that constricted knot of your selfishness, self-cherishing. And we're going to try to reduce that through this meditation, just visualizing. And as you are seated here in the room now, visualize in the space across from you is an exact replica of yourself facing you. Just seated there across from you. If it's difficult to visualize, just imagine that you are there. Take a moment to reflect on the various ways you suffer. And think about how great it would be if you were free from this suffering. So as you inhale, you seated here in the room, in your right nostril, you're going to bring all that suffering out of your front visualization of yourself through the left nostril. You're going to inhale through your right nostril. You can imagine whatever images represent that to you, whether it's environmental toxins, words like war and hatred, different colored light rays that represent suffering to you, animals that can kill you, poisonous plants. And all that comes out of the front visualization from the left nostril, enters you seated here in the room through your right nostril. It goes directly to the self-cherishing knot, purifying, cleaning it. Imagine it forming again and again, and we continue to purify. But from a place, a deeper spaciousness, by purifying that self-absorption, we're going to offer now out of our left nostril all the images of happiness and healing you can imagine. Offer to the front visualization of yourself, and it enters them through the right nostril, bringing them this sense of happiness and peace. Tonglen. Just try as best as you can. You can just mount it on your breath as you inhale and exhale. And slowly imagine the front visualization of yourself has some suffering lessened, a bit happier and more peaceful. So if we have more time, you can do this longer. If you'd like, feel free to reach over and give yourself a hug, or just acknowledging the help you can give yourself. And allow that front visualization of yourself to dissolve slowly from the edges into the center, into a radiant crystal drop of light. And allow that drop to come to your crown, slowly melting into you. And just feel that you have definitely lessened some of your self-cherishing. So in closing all of our exercises today, let's dedicate whatever positive energy, whatever merit we have created in helping us be able to continue a rich, consistent practice, or to start one with good habits, and to be able to find some creative ways that are realistic for us to make a wonderful practice for ourselves that will benefit our heart and mind and propel us along a path to full enlightenment, to becoming Buddhas. So we are then unlimited in benefiting all other beings. I'd like to dedicate to the long lives of all of our precious teachers, particularly His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Geshe Nawang Tenli, and for all the conflicts in the world to be pacified, and for all those needing additional healing right now, may they receive it completely and immediately. And can we turn to the gold prayer books? And I want to read this dedication prayer. Let's see, it's on page 246. This is a beautiful prayer from Master Shantideva. And let's just really send this out to the universe. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. The forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power. May people think of benefiting each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain to dispel the miseries of the world. And the long life prayers for His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Lama Zopa Rinpoche are on page 273. Let's chant this one in the Tibetan phonetics for His Holiness. O gan ri ram we ko we jin kam der pendang de wa ma lu chung wei ne, chen rei zi wang ten jing gya to yi, sha pei si te bar du ten gyo jin. On page 279, Short Long Life Prayer for Lama Zopa Rinpoche. We can read in English. You who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three jewels, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. Thank you so much for coming, for joining us today. There's some other programs you can, I think you have the flyer of my visit this week. It's been great to spend the day with you. You guys are great. Thank you so much for your questions and your participation. And I really, really hope you can keep your practices going or start a practice. Thank you so much. And if you need a card or want the website, you can find out from here of some other activities, and maybe you can join our retreat at Garrison in May. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for coming.